Basically, nobody likes preseason polls, and there are a lot of people who don't like polls until week 6 of the college football season, and yet we get preseason polls, we get preseason media polls by conference, and we get a preseason coaches poll, which is out, and I think is interesting for a couple of different reasons. If you look at the preseason media poll, the top 5, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, I think that in itself is a really interesting top 5 because the consensus coming out of Big Ten Media Days, coming out of everybody's breakdown of the Big Ten, is that Penn State is the team to beat out of the Big Ten. And yet, even being the number 3 team in the country, they are behind a Big Ten school in Ohio State at the preseason coaches poll. I find that incredibly interesting. I also wonder how much the fact that Ohio State plays Texas to begin the season, so you get a 1-2 matchup to begin 2025, plays into the fact that Ohio State and Texas are number 1. I think that there are legitimate question marks for a lot of schools when you go through this list of teams that are in the top 25. Just taking a look at schools with quarterback questions alone. I think Ohio State has quarterback questions. I think Georgia has quarterback questions. Notre Dame, Alabama. I don't think Miami's quarterback is any good. They're number 10. I think you just keep going on down the list. It certainly appears as if Michigan is going to start a true freshman at quarterback. They're number 14. I think there's a question mark there. Tennessee is 18. They have as big a question mark as virtually anybody. So when you go through this, I find that incredibly interesting that there are programs, for instance, I want so badly to believe in Texas A&M. I want so badly to tell you that I think the Aggies are good enough at virtually every position to be a team that can play in the college football playoff. But I think they have question marks. BYU has a question mark at quarterback. They're number 23. There's all sorts of question marks in here, and that's part of the good and the bad of a preseason media poll, right? Is that we could look back on this someday and go like, how the hell did they have Alabama at number 8? And that could be good or bad. That could be because Alabama went 12-0 and curb stomped the hell out of everybody on their schedule, or they pulled a Florida State. I don't think they're going to pull a Florida State and go 2-10, but it's a possibility. I mean, crazier things have happened. But I'm really enthralled by the idea of, can Georgia's defense be good enough if their quarterback play is not good? Can Ohio State's weapons, for instance, if Julian Sand or Lincoln Keenholz is not good enough at quarterback, can they be good enough skill position players and good enough defensively that you don't need your quarterback to be an all-world talent? I love the question marks that come up from this. I also love the idea, and I think I saw this clip the other day, by the way, from Reese Davis, College Game Day host, talking about how he thinks that the argument about 8 conference games versus 9 conference games in the Big Ten versus SEC, essentially. You can argue that it's Big 12, ACC, whatever. The Big Ten versus SEC argument of 8 conference games versus 9 conference games, that he views that argument as stupid, ridiculous. It is not poignant at any point of the conversation. It's all done for posturing, and that he doesn't believe that it really ultimately matters at the end of the day. And I think that when you look at the preseason top 25, you see that disparity on display because the Big Ten schools, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Illinois, Michigan, are they the only ones on here? Yeah, I think so. They potentially have one more loss. Or the Big Ten as a whole has one more loss than the SEC schools who are on here: Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Florida, Tennessee, Texas A&M. All of those schools have the opportunity to not have a guaranteed loss or guaranteed one more loss, or their strength of record to be better because their schools don't have to play that extra conference game. And so I think that is indicative of this, that when you see this top 25 and you start projecting records for some of the top 25s, you can say, hey, it's possible that South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M all finish with 9-3 records because they don't have to play South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, Texas A&M. They are not all there together having to play each other over and over and over again. They do it one last time than the Big Ten does. So Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, Illinois, the chances that all of them avoid each other and all of that stuff that comes with it are significantly less because they play more. And so I think that is kind of fighting with one hand tied behind your back if you're the Big Ten, and fighting with both hands if you're the SEC. So I think to call that this dumb, disingenuous argument, I think is dumb and disingenuous. Now, I am interested in the fact that Clemson is number 6. And I wonder if, I guess I wonder how much thought goes into that, how much argument goes into that. Because I think there's a really good chance that Clemson is, frankly, one of the 5 best teams in the country. And is the argument that you have to have 2 Big Ten and 2 SEC schools before you can have the first ACC school? Is the argument that, yes, Clemson might be good, but they're not in the SEC, they're not in the Big Ten, so they can't be. I hope we haven't gotten our judgment that clouded, that if you were not in the Big Ten or ACC, you can't be the number 1 team in the country or the top 5 team in the country because you're not the Big Ten or the SEC or potentially Notre Dame. I think there are a lot of really good teams, and I think this is a fun exercise because, for instance, Florida is 17. Could Florida be a college football playoff contender? Yeah, I think so. If things go absolutely perfect. Can Iowa State? Yeah, for a completely different set of circumstances. I think that there is some of that power to than the other 2 bias in this, because if you look at the top 10 teams, they are Big Ten, SEC, Notre Dame, which you can argue is ACC. I don't want to get into that. And then Clemson and Miami. So you have 3 Big Ten schools, 4 SEC schools, Notre Dame, Clemson, Miami in the top 10. And then you start going through the rest of the top 25, and then you start getting those ACC schools, SMU, the Big 12 schools, Kansas State, Iowa State, BYU, Texas Tech. And then I think that there is, and I think that this will become increasingly more true and likely, in that Boise State has spot number 25. I believe that spot number 25 is going to continue to be, hey, the group of 5 school most likely to be the representative in the college football playoff. Because if there isn't a group of 5 school in the top 25 and they make the college football playoff, and you get a situation akin to last year where Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama all thought that they should have been in the college football playoff. Why? I don't. Alabama, maybe you could argue that they should have been in over SMU, who lost their conference championship game. But I'm here to tell you that the SEC, I promise you, doesn't want to get to a point where you are punished for making your conference championship game. But that's neither here nor there. If you have a spot in the college football playoff that is occupied by somebody who is not in the top 25, and they get that spot because they are the highest rated group of 5 champion, we're never, ever in a million years going to see, in my opinion, in the college football playoff rankings, fewer than 2 group of 5 teams in the top 25, because when it gets down to the nitty gritty at the first rankings, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. When you get to November, there's going to be 2 group of 5 teams, and they're going to be number 25 and whatever. because they don't want to be in a spot where the highest rated group of 5 champion is not in the top 25, because then you have to confront the fact that this playoff system might be constructed really, really poorly. And if you have to confront that, questions come out. And if you have questions, then you have to have answers. And when the answer is, that's how we set it up, I don't know, it's not a great answer. There are answers and there are excuses. And when those questions pop up of why in the hell nobody cared last year, because Boise State was really good. It took the number 1 team in the country to its second best game of the season, and nobody batted an eye. But if Boise State's going to finish number 25 at the end of November, and let's say someone in the group of Florida, Tennessee, Texas A&M, South Carolina doesn't make the college football playoff, there are going to be calls to tear the whole thing down. And it only gets worse if Boise State, or whoever the group of 5 representative is, doesn't get into the college football playoff, and Boise State isn't ranked in the top 25. So I think you're going to see every year, no matter what, there be a group of 5 school listed in the top 25 in the preseason. That's basically a, hey, it's your spot in the college football playoff as long as you don't screw it up. I think we're going to see that over and over and over again, and I think you see it here, because is Boise State the 25th best team in the country? I don't think so. I'm interested. I think it's interesting that someone like Oklahoma is not in the top 25. Someone like Louisville is not in the top 25. I find those interesting developments. But when you have to make room for a group of 5 schools, so your entire playoff doesn't look like it's constructed really poorly, that's what you get. Want to know your thoughts on the coaches preseason poll? Who's too high? Who's too low? Want to know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll have more comments on this as we approach week 0. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we are pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.